Hell yeah! Woo! John Schaefer's here. I'm making lines today. I got picked up by a new company, Phoenix Industries. They make all these fittings to 16, I think, dash like 3, 20. All the way up to 20 or something like that. And then all kinds of stuff in between. They have a really cool comprehensive website that you can do on your phone. Super simple to figure out what you need and what you want. And their helpful and exchange is really easy if you happen to get the wrong stuff. So hit them up. But today's video is definitely brought to you by Phoenix Industries. And we are going to be plumbing the entire E46 today, from the cooling system, fuel system, the oiling system. That's pretty much all I have, which I don't have everything for the fuel system. That'll take some time. Definitely. And then I don't have all the power steering stuff. I don't have all the fuel system stuff, but I do have the coolant stuff. Oh, also check this out. This is their fuel filter that they make. It's got one screen here and a screen here. It's got 100 pre and a 10 post. Pretty legit. This doesn't have all the fittings and stuff on it because I'm waiting for some pieces to come in. That's pretty sick. And I want to like mount it somewhere super simple and easy. It's also cleanable. You can take it apart, spray some brake cleaner in it, and get the mesh screens inside all cleaned out. So I brought this one home so that I could at least mount up where I want it to be, mock it all up, and then we can move forward. So that's where we're at. We're gonna get some plumbing done today. I'm gonna show you some of the ways of how we do plumbing and the right way to do it. A lot of people do plumbing on their cars, but they do it wrong. A lot of people use ANs, but they're not really doing it the proper way. So I'll show you some of the stuff that I've learned over the years, and it should be fun.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Alright, so I'll give you a little tip on how to cut. I think we could almost make this like how to cut a hose. How to install, these will all be separate videos. I'll try to get you like as many tips and tricks as we do this build. Figure out the length that you want to cut it. This is a nylon braid, so it doesn't have anything crazy in there. There's a little bit of metal weaved into it, but this is just a regular nylon wrap. And so with the stainless steel, you're going to want to use duct tape. With this, you can get away with just using masking tape. So you essentially figure out how far you want to cut, wrap that section that you're going to cut in masking tape, and pretty much cut it right down the center. And what the masking tape does is it keeps this weave from coming apart and spreading, which makes it harder on the next step that we'll show you. So wrap your line in masking tape. If you have stainless steel, wrap it in duct tape. Let's send it. Ready? Stupid safety lever. Break that.
Make sure you wear your glasses.
Yeah, wear safety glasses. And you have a pretty clean cut. I'm just going to clean it up because beautiful.
Boom. This is where you just throw it on the car and it's done, right?
And then it installs itself. Alright, Schaefer, so it's cut, and now you simply take this apart, and what you want to do, so you spin it on, get that thing all the way tightened down, and then you'll end up inserting that side.
With oil, we gotta get some oil up in here.
Yep, which we have our trusty WD-40 white lithium. We'll end up putting some oil on that section there. We'll do a little bit on the hose in here, and then we'll go ahead and start screwing it all together. Well, we gotta push that in further. Can you get it in further or no?
Just trying.
These are not like super simple, easy things to put together. Very tough.
It's pretty in there.
That's in there, that's in there, that looks good. So then you'll insert this end here, and you'll press it in as far as you can, and then try to turn it to grab some threads. And then as it grabs threads, it pinches the rubber hose on the inside. It kind of like, what it does is it expands the hose and presses it into the wall, while it pushes and sends the center out into the wall. It's this weird like setup, but we got some AN wrenches from Phoenix as well. I'll pretty much hold this side. Let me hold this end while he tightens that. Hold on, you two. Bam! And then after it's all said and done, if you have a vise, Phoenix sells these right here, which are vise jaws. And I have a vise, it's just not at this house. I had to hold this bottom nut here while Schaefer tightened in the fitting into here. And again, what it does is just expand the rubber hose into the out to the walls and force this center piece into the center of the hose. And now it's tight. Sick. All right, so that's one end. I'll show you kind of a technique that a lot of people don't use. It's just called anti-seize. So you put some anti-seize on this here. AN, this is a -16. And that's just to help it when you're taking it on and off if need be. It's to anti-seize it so it doesn't seize, but just a little dab on there.
Oh, it's too
you're
much.
good, you're good. Get some on
Swirl
like,
it around.
get some like in them threads. Yeah, that's plenty. And then we'll go ahead and when we run this on, this will just go on a little bit smoother and protected versus it just going on dry and maybe potentially this aluminum causing any threading issues. So this already feels smoother than when you took it off. This feels way better. So that's the upper hose line there. And bam, so we'll be putting some anti-seize on most of our stuff and getting it all dialed in and set up. And then I'll take my AN wrench over here, and just to show you guys, this isn't where it's gonna sit, but just to show you guys kind of how this works, this is not the right one. I need the other 16. There's two 16 wrenches in this kit. One is for the nut and one is for the actual AN. So this one's for the actual AN. And then when you do your ANs, what you do is you bottom them out like that, and then you just give them like a nice snug. If you tighten it too much, you'll put a groove into the flare on both ends and you'll ruin it, and you gotta buy it all over again. Just do it right the first time so you don't have to deal with that. That's the upper radiator hose that'll go back there. And then next is this 120 bend lower radiator hose. So John will find the distance, we'll wrap it, tape it up, and cut it, and repeat the process. I'm gonna go ahead and jump on that with him, get it done. And then if I do something different, I will start to film that section. So repeat on everything. So these are ORB, aka orb fittings, like Schaefer said. It's a -10 ORB to a -10 AN. Now on this Moroso oil block, you can see the little dimple that it has cut out on the edges there, and that's for the O-ring to sit. So what we're gonna end up doing is screwing this in here, getting it nice and close to done, and it runs into that one. So I gotta take that one back out. Damn it. I thought about this too before I did it, and then I didn't pay attention. What I like to do when I am putting in these ORB setups with the O-rings, this is not the right tool for this, but it's the only one I have, so suck it, internet. I like to put a little bit of Teflon, liquid Teflon, something like that. Nice and gooey. It's like a melted marshmallow style. So go ahead and just put a little bit of that on there.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. That'll spread out, do its thing. We'll go ahead and just install that. And you can see the Teflon spreading on the threads. There's probably going to be some excess, which just means we need to get a little bit of brake cleaner and a rag and get it cleaned off. On these, you don't want to tighten them down too much because they have an O-ring. You just want to get them snug. Snuggy boys. Make sure you snug that good because that's your oiling system. Alright, so we'll just take a rag. It takes a little bit of effort, but it'll come right off. This is one of the things, though, that's going to help your car last a lot longer, is if you are installing things correctly, taking extra precaution, and making sure they're clean. Tell me how I know, because I've been on the opposite end of this, and it's no fun. And having something that's built clean and nice, also in a field that is saturated with drivers who are pretty good, and a field that is saturated with personalities, which companies like, you need to try to set yourself apart as much as possible.
It's true.
It's true. There's a lot of freaking dudes out here who are good. You need to figure out what makes you better. I wanted to run it underneath, but we just didn't have the right pieces at the shop to get that done, so that's fine. We'll have to offset it just a tad bit, and then we'll run this one straight down the line. So now you can see they're kind of offset, but they'll at least be together, and we'll keep these oil lines together. And when this is in there, the oil lines are going to run under the pan over into the opposite side of the engine. That'd be sick. Why? Hold on, I should explain why, because people are going to be like, why'd you put it on the other side of the motor? Because there's a steering column right there, there's an alternator right there, there's headers right here. There's a lot of stuff going on this side of the motor, and if you look at the other side of the engine, there's literally nothing down here. So I'll put my oil filter mounted maybe off of that, or maybe even build a bracket that holds it off of the block and make it all one big unit. So complicated, bunch of stuff on this side, nothing on the other side. I had the old ones going over the headers here, but the block height was different and I had a different setup, and I didn't really want to do that setup again. I wanted to run these forward. So this works a lot better when you have a vise. And I do have one, like I said. It's just not here. And I would give so much to have my vise here. but it's connected to a giant steel table that my dad built before I was even alive, and it like weighs more than my car, and I'm not moving that thing around. Not gonna move that thing here, no way.
It's all right.
I'd rather take these lines over there.
I got one more for you.
I'm gonna go drive to my mom's house, I'll be back. So every single one of these fittings has some anti-seize on it. All these are put together with some white lithium to kind of help the rubber slide into the aluminum. Don't worry, it will not back out. Schaefer kind of pointed out that if we went straight, we'd run straight into the fender well here. So I got to go back to Phoenix and get some 45s and exchange more parts, which is fine. I'm sure they'd love to see me. So we'll do 2 45s here, so those ends can be, one of those could be done. And then what we did is we sent the bulkheads right there through the firewall. Super clean, nice and staggered, high point, keep it high. The right side one is the high point on the motor, and then they come back underneath the factory rail, into bulkheads, into the back, and then they go up to the radiator underneath the car. The next thing we gotta do is get another 45 for the radiator fill here, and the radiator fill is gonna come up to this reservoir here, which we need to figure out where it's gonna be mounted. But John came up with a great idea about this fuel filter. He was talking about putting this fuel filter, obviously directional in order once we do this, but having it bracketed off of this strut bar style bar here, and then we can run the dash 8 straight off the fuel cell into here and then down underneath the car. What that would do is it would add a little bit more weight to the rear, which this isn't too much, but again, it all adds up. Also keep this area clean, and then Radium makes a rail mounted regulator. So essentially, if we put the filter in the back, we'd have the line come up or go out of the fuel cell into the filter, out of the filter underneath the car, feeding directly straight to this rail, through the rail, regulate on the back side of the fuel rail. If you regulate on the back side, then you have 100% of what your pumps can do in your rails. If you regulate prior, you are potentially shorting this last injector for fuel, and you don't want to do that because you go lean, you heat stuff up, stuff melts, good luck. Regulate after with the Radium regulator, and then that line will go back down, the dash 6 will go back down into the return in the tank. And this engine bay would essentially stay just like this with just the 2 coolant lines. Very, very, very simple. I think the only other thing that might be in here is the brake master reservoirs that are probably going to be on this side. So you'd have the brake master on that side, fuel pressure regulator on the rail, and then the coolant lines going there. Super freaking simple. What do you think, John?
I think it's gonna work.
I think it's gonna work too.
Gonna send it.
Just gonna send it. Phoenix sells these regular rubber setups, and then they send this style braid. And these little silver notches in this braid tells you that this rubber that's in here is treated to deal with E85. All this stuff, super freaking amazing. Really, really excited to work with a company like Phoenix. Phoenix just has everything to connect all this stuff to that stuff back there. It's just your job to figure out what's the best, cleanest, simplest, best working way to do it. So it's fairly simple. Coolant line coming off. Coolant return from the radiator. High point on our engine bleeding that will go all the way back to that reservoir there. Boom, that guy there. And then the high point on the radiator is going up to that reservoir as well. And then the feed on the radiator goes up to that reservoir. And that is how you do a proper setup on a rear mount radiator. Everybody who's been having issues with like bleeding their radiator and cooling systems and jacking up their motors and doing all this special extra stuff to try to get the air out of the system and jacking their car and flip-flopping and doing all this, your system's set up wrong. Set it up right and you won't have any of these issues. You can't have you can't have issues like that at the track when you're trying to drive. You can't have to, like, if for whatever reason this motor needs to come out and then I got to take off these lines, I don't want to have to put it all back together and then jack the car up to bleed the system and wait however long it takes to do that. Instead of setting it up like this, where the system literally bleeds itself and cycles itself. A lot of people don't know this. It's kind of been very amazing to me to see how people are building cars and how much money people are paying other people to build their cars for them and have them not work properly. So, does that mean I want to build your car? Absolutely not. But I'll give you all the tips and tricks that I have, that I know have worked because they're proven to help you set your car up better or help you tell the shop who's building your car, hey bro, that's wrong. Do it like this. Tell them come watch my video. If they want to be upset, tell them take it up with me. They're wrong. Do it the right way. You can't deal with this stuff at the track. Get it done right the first time. And you say, I don't have money to do it right. What does that mean, John?
Go work harder.
Go work harder. I like that answer. If you have money to do it wrong twice, then you have enough money to do it right the first time. Get it done right. Stop playing games. So again, the point of this routing is first of all to work. Second of all, to be easy to work on.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, 5 minute competition timeout, don't forget. Third, it's a natural attribute of doing the first two is that it looks good. Those are like the three things. Works, easy to work on, the looks. Think of those things when you're building. Here we go. How to have a proper cooling system that will bleed itself. Spend the money once. Don't spend it twice. Spend it once. All right, so steam ports on the LS. Connected, one to the second one. Down, steam port line will go all the way back up to that reservoir back there. Upper coolant line from here into a bulkhead in the firewall. Lower line to the bulkhead. So all the pressure builds, and as the pressure builds, it pushes the coolant, or it pushes the air and eventually the water up through the steam port, push all the air back to the back. Out of the bulkheads with the steam port line, down along the floor, underneath the seat bracket, over the back seat bracket, into bulkheads again. And those are the radiator lines that come out of the bulkheads into the radiator. Steam line keeps going out of in between the radiator and the floor there, and will come up and go into the reservoir at a high spot in the reservoir. So it'll come up and go into this here. From right there on the radiator, that's the highest point on the radiator, and with the flow of the water, it's going to be pushing air to that spot there. Before it gets to our fill, the air is going to come out of that highest point up into the second highest point here. The fill for the radiator also comes up to this reservoir. So any air that builds in the entire system is going to get to the highest point because that's what happens in the hydraulics of the cooling system. GM says that's the steam port up there on the motor, and then I say that this is the highest point on the radiator. So naturally the air is going to get to those pockets and it's going to come up to the highest point. So when we fill this, what it'll do is we'll need to run the engine and do things like that, but when we fill it, it should cycle all the water and pull all the air out. Maybe even after a couple runs, we open this up and we double check it. But it'll naturally push all the air out of the system to the highest point. It needs to be higher than your motor and higher than your radiator. On top of a rear mount radiator system working properly, you need a good fan. That's the fan I run. John runs, what do you run? Durali fans. You run like 4,000 CFMs, you said? This one does like 4,600 CFMs, but this pulls way more amperage than what his does. So I need a beefier alternator to pair up with this fan. He doesn't need a beefier alternator to pair with this fan. So you pick and choose your battles. That is how you properly set up the rear mount radiator system. Anybody who tells you different doesn't know what they're talking about, okay? I'm going off of GM's logic, and I'm going off of my experience, his experience, and a couple other homies' experiences. This is how it works properly, along with all the stuff I worked on professionally at work. This is how the cooling system bleeds itself. Do it like this and you should be good. If you're experiencing an issue, you probably did something wrong. Be careful when you do it. Coolant lines in the car are a sketchy thing because that's really hot water, and you might not think 200 degrees is bad, but when it sprays you in your face and all over your body, it sucks. Or when it builds steam inside the car and you can't see outside the car, that's scary. That's pretty much it. That's how you set up your cooling system, the fuel system. That's how I've been told to set it up, and making, again, all this is super, super simple to work on. Nothing's hard to get to. Everything's readily available to be accessed. Every single thing. The only thing that I maybe wish I did different was on this dash 4 steam port, put some bulkheads in the system, which I still could go and do. Yeah, we'll see. I don't care too much about that. That'll just be all right. So this will all eventually get wrapped in heat wrap, because I know somebody's would be like, what about the heat? This will get wrapped in its heat and get mounted up on the side here. So that's your cooling system. That's your fuel system on the LS E46 swap. Obviously this is a little simpler because we have all the beautiful Radium product. You too can get the Radium product. All you got to do is go to radiumengineering.com, I believe. Radium fuel cell doc, it doesn't matter, it's right here on the screen. Type this in and then you go find those products and you can get all of them. All the Phenix stuff is available too. Nothing that I have is something that you can't get. You can get all this stuff. You can take your time. You could not go to sushi. You could not smoke a bowl. You could not party with your homies. You could do whatever and cut corners to make money.
Cancel your car insurance.
Cancel your car insurance, life insurance, vehicle insurance, home insurance, renter's insurance. Cancel it all and go get yourself some cool stuff. This stuff's actually not that pricey. It just takes time to do. If you're trying to do it in a weekend and do it on whatever, a minimum wage job, it's just gonna take you longer. Again, if you have money to do it wrong twice, because you will, you can do it the first time. The very goods. Don't cut the corners. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, John, for all the help. Woo! Give John a follow. This is his Instagram again because it was further in the video earlier. Thank you guys. This is the E46 Pro 2 LS CBM monster. Hold fast. Monster crazy, nasty, disgusting.
SLR.
Beautiful SLR BC equipped. And you get the program, all right? Look, it's sick. Thanks for watching, bros. Stay safe.
Big